เรียนท่านผู้บริหาร
Distinguished participants, members of the press, I welcome you to the SEC Conference 2018 Capital Market for All. The SEC has organized this in order to inform you of the important strategies at the SEC, and we will be updating you with the achievements for the past year and also presenting to you the strategy for moving forward the capital market in Thailand. Our objective is to make the Thai capital market a market that is truly for the people, with more access by the people, providing efficient investment, and to drive forward the economy of the country and to make technology play a very important role in it. My name is Kanitha Kumwong from the SEC, and I will be your host for today. We will begin with the key remarks from the Secretary General of the SEC, who will be informing us of the past achievements and the way forward. And we will then continue with discussions on three very important topics. We are honored to have representatives from many sectors who are represented here and will be sharing their views with us, which will be very interesting indeed. There will be three topics discussed. The first one, wealth advice, creating opportunity for Thai people to have money, long-term savings. FinTech, approaching the digital capital market for Thailand, and effective supervision, fostering an ecosystem for registered companies and boosting investor confidence. First of all, I would like to call upon the Secretary General of the SEC to inform us about the past achievements that we have made and the way forward for the SEC. The Secretary General, Kun Rapi Sucharit-Kun, please. Good morning to all distinguished guests. First of all, I would like to say that Kun Warawit Jampirat cannot make it here today. Actually, he's been queued for the opening statement, but he's lost his voice on Friday and has a fever and wouldn't be able to come and see you here today. And so, first of all, the organizers wanted me to wear something on my ear, something like a microphone. But for myself, I'm quite elderly, and I don't like to have something attached to my face. It's like this hospitalized person, so I beg your forgiveness for that. I thank you for being here today. Actually, our conference has been organized. It's like a registered company. We will need to organize annual general meetings to meet our stakeholders and to inform them what has been going on for the past year, and also to inform us about what we will do in the future, because the work of the SEC, although we are authorized by law, although we have our own act, but many things that concern developing the capital market, there is no way that we can do it alone. We will need to rely on our partners. We will need supporters, and we will also need people to help us move forward our work, people who are closer to the industry than we are. So I'd like to take a little bit of your time to inform you on certain matters. Our stakeholders are many indeed. As you see on the screen, we have investors, we have registered companies, financial advisors, registered companies, we have the stock exchange, we have the bond association, we have Bank of Thailand, Ministry of Finance, the pension fund, provident fund, and all that. And of course, you know that we have a variety of stakeholders, so we will need to communicate with them, make them understand, which is not an easy task for us to go about doing. So I'd like to spend some time to tell you on certain matters which we think are the important highlights of the past year. the things that we've come across and the work that has been accomplished by the SEC. Each slide will be telling you what we have done, and then there will be a bar down below which tells you our own assessment of how much we have achieved. This has come out from the meeting that we had last week. That's how much we think we have achieved. So first of all, the grouping is done according to our work plan. So we have things ranging from competitiveness, inclusiveness, using technology. What have we done in terms of this thing? There are many things, and some of them are things that we have put much effort into, and certain things that we have not yet achieved such clear outcomes, but we expect that this year we will be able to see more results, more accomplishments on the way forward. First of all, the law on fintech, the things that we have been drafting, and the act itself is important because it will provide ground for using technology, and we have set up commissions in order to issue rules and regulations. We're talking about things like eKYC, virtual reality, transactions, which at present do not yet have a law that provides protection on that. The sandbox, we have opened up our sandbox and regulations, and this is a new idea. Springing from the fact that while our regulation needs to be changed, needs to be adapted because the process is very long, we need to have hearings, we need to have adoptions by certain commissions. So can we have temporary regulations, for example, something that lasts 1 year, and then we will provide room for the SEC to consider that meanwhile and delve down into the details, which will make it more better for us. As for crowdfunding is something that is coming on strong. ICO is in the news every day, both good news and bad news. And this is something that has created considerable confusion, but Kun Tipsada and Kun Thakon will be informing you in detail about this matter so that we have an understanding on it. But the SEC needs to prepare for these things because these are things that will appear in our market and in the global market at a very fast pace. And if we do not prepare well in advance, then we will not be able to catch up with the rest. And then we have challenges. Last year, we've been trying to create a forum for stakeholders in fintech, allow room for them to discuss with us and propose ideas. Cyber resiliency is a very big topic indeed. We think that at the present time, our companies in the stock market, the banks, the operators, everything, when coming to think about it, these companies have become IT companies because everything has been computerized. Nothing is manual anymore. And so you have attacks taking place all the time during the past year. And this has caused the SEC and all the regulators to be concerned. And we've conducted cyber drills to create understanding and knowledge, and we must take this up to the board level or the commission level, the highest level. The infrastructure is in technology is something to invest in because we think that this year and next year in the near future, it's the age for technology, and technology is possible only with data, and data that is interoperable, something that is machine readable, something that is on open API. And if we don't do this, it's like you have an iPhone but you don't have any internet connection, so it's useless. So these are things that we think we have done quite well in the past year. As for governance standard, it is something that is the work of the SEC, and we have put great emphasis on that, especially in sales conduct. This is an issue that is a burning issue for us because we think that measures in selling financial products in our system is something that needs much more work. And in the past year, we have done something called a serve assistance questionnaire for the banks, for the asset companies to fill in order to find the gaps between the expectation of the SEC and what is actually practiced. Find that gap and also allow time for the closing of the gap. And this is a lot of work because we are dealing with sellers, we're dealing with the industry, the branches of the banks that amount up to many thousand branches in the system. And we need to have these financial institutions self-regulate themselves and also move up their own standards. As for putting investors first, every one of us are saying that we want to be customer-centric. We want to take care of our customers, but in terms of the capital market, putting investors first, is that really practice? And myself and Kun Warawan will further deliberate on this in the next session. As for conflicts of interest, we know that the capital market is actually a market of conflict of interest. The work of the SEC is standing in the midst of that conflict between the buyers and the sellers, the pricing, the data information, and everything. As for the presentation standards for the PVD, is something that we are also working on because members should have a right to know about the funds that have been managed by the companies when compared. What is the comparison, and do the members understand that? CG code, I code is also a big issue because especially in terms of CG code, because people look at corporate governance as rules and regulations. When you talk about CG, people tend to think that it concerns only the SEC, the stock exchange issuing new regulations, but actually this has to do with the sustainability of the entrepreneurs themselves. And if the entrepreneurs do not take this into account and do not truly understand it, enforcing these rules and regulations will require much more effort, and it will be not so fruitful. So our big challenge is to find ways to make people understand that CG code is actually conducted or implemented for themselves, especially the registered companies. These are mostly family companies. We need to make them understand that CG code is something that will make them better able to hand down their business to other generations. I code, we are trying to create a market force on this in parallel with working on the CG code. And both codes and also our investors, institutional and individuals, they're playing a more clear role in the past through social media or through other channels. These things have made the assessment of our corporate governance ranking, made us put us on a high rank. It's not simply ticking forms, but the people doing in-depth review for corporate governance in our country, they say that this is an area that they're very impressed in. It is an area where they see significant improvement, where our people are ready to get up and to use their right and create a constructive market force truly. CFO is another issue. We are trying to grasp the problem of the lack of personnel in the system. Making CFOs understand these things will help alleviate the burden of the auditors, or actually the auditors. These are the third line of defense. The CFO, CEO, this is the first line of defense, and if the CFO, CEO are not aware of the implications of accounting standards, by the time things get to the auditors, it will not be, we cannot act in time. Now, as for the registered companies, we have much discussion about this with the SET, uplifting the quality, trying to find ways to reduce the pain points of the registered companies of having to run back and forth between many agencies, and trying to make them understand the regulations that have been issued go hand in hand with between the SEC and the SET, and this will make a cycle. So this is what we have been doing in governance standard. As for empowering investors, what we are doing much is fund fact sheet. This is something that originally, when in the old fund fact sheet, you will see things all the time, but not in companies, not in banks. You see it at the roadside stalls because it's been made into paper bags. Nobody reads them because they don't understand what they're reading. So we're trying to digitize our fact sheet. We're trying to sum up the important points about the funds and trying to digest this and make it suitable for people requiring people who are long-sighted because they're old. So make the prints big. The PVD Symposium, we organized this. It's a very big event. Ajahn Pornrung is here and he's been doing research. People going on retirement and having an income that is above hardship, something that would make them able to sustain themselves and not have much hardship, they would need to have 3 million baht on the day that they retire. But as for our Provident Fund, with 3 million members, we find that half of the members have less than 1 million baht in their savings on the day that they retire. So it is a big task for us to get people to save more and to know how to invest, and this is what we're working on continuously. As for enforcement, civil sanction, you see that we have announcements coming out monthly of who these sanctions have been imposed on. We're going to go fast because it's not a popular topic. FSAP is something that we will assess at the end of this year, and we will assess the entire financial sector, the Bank of Thailand, the OIC, and also the SEC. Everybody is preparing to comply with all the principles like the ISCO principle. All the documents must be translated so that they will be able to check and see. And FSAP this year, they've come in and they're concerned about the cooperation between the three regulators, the OIC, the BOT, and the SEC, in assessing the risk of the entire system. Is anybody responsible for this? What is the flow of information? And what are the emerging risks and where are they? And so here in our country, we're quite unfortunate that the three regulators have been set apart. It's like we have three different markets, but as you all know, that everything goes back to the banking dominance. And so when an incident takes place in the capital market, can the banking system escape the consequences? This is a very big question. Is somebody providing supervision for this? As for the debt instrument, the BE, and everything, a tremendous size within the system, and something that we need to place great importance on, because our assessment, we will be compared with neighboring countries which have already been assessed, and this info will appear on the website. The last time we did the assessment was 8 years ago, and with this, the score post has been moved all the time. New standards are coming out all the time, so we'll need to prepare ourselves. As for CLMV, you can get the V out. CLM, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, our neighboring countries. The big question is how to make them grow as we grow, instead of instead of us taking from them. And so we want to tell them that the thing that we want is to grow together with them. We want our industry to benefit from these countries' need of capacity building, infrastructure support, and need of know-how, while these countries themselves would like to have their own markets, but would that be plausible in the long term or not? this is also what we are trying to work hard on in many ways. And I would like to inform you that Myanmar and Thailand have just signed an MOU, and Myanmar is the first country that has signed an MOU at the end of last year with us, and that has made we have take the chair of the association, Kun Warawan, Kun U, Kun and other people to meet the people in the Myanmar industry, and we have organized seminars from them. And we are interested in finding ways to bring in infrastructure funds or to raise funds in our country. And Cambodia has come out to say very clearly that they would like to have a dual listing with Thailand. So we'll need to work on this with the stock exchange and the regulators. And for other important tasks, there are many that have been implemented by the SEC. For example, the proposing of the draft law on trust. The fact that we don't have a law on trust yet will create a problem, because our businesses are in the third and fourth generation, and this needs to be handed down. But we would need to provide a solution for the younger generation, and the trust law will be applicable to how to manage these assets and to make our industry grow in Singapore, in Hong Kong, how to move them back onshore, which will be for our benefit. And for the asset law, for the securities law, this has gone through many hearings, and it's been being considered by the cabinet. Probably we'll be able to propose it to the cabinet at the end of this month or next month, and this will be creating better standard in many ways. This is for the state-owned enterprise law. We are involved a lot in that because it relates to creating better corporate governance for registered companies and for state-owned enterprises. Both the ones that have been registered and the ones that have the laws on their establishment. And there is a commission that is being put together on this. And as for the debt instrument bonds, this is a hot topic. Term fund also. We think it is a strange animal in the eyes of the SEC. It is something that other countries don't have, and something that grows very well in Thailand. So we are quite concerned on this, because when we talk about term funds, this is a kind of debt instrument, a kind of fund. But if you look at these funds worldwide, you will see that they are well diversified. They're investing in so many instruments, and the fund manager can move in and out in time if he thinks that the issuer is showing signs that things are not going very well, and the yield and the NAV every time there is an adjustment. This is visible to the investors, and they will be informed about the risk that they are shouldering and be able to decide whether that is worth the returns that they are getting. So it's a fund that is very diversified. It provides many escape routes, and people can see that. It's visible to people. But for the term fund, it's something that is locked up. And if you buy it 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, you can't pull out. Diversification is low. And if there is no default, then that's fine. But if there is a default and it's sold as a deposit substitute, then the question is, what will happen to the industry? It is something that we must find ways to handle and to have greater diversification. Some warning that we need to put out to the people when they are buying these things. The capital, there's a mini chalk last year. There was a default, and it's been a big issue because people have expectations that there can be no default in this market, but that's not possible for there to be no default. And the question is, do people know when they go in and buy these instruments, these debt instruments, and are they aware about the risk and the return in the past? Is it justified or not?
the risk in our system, and we end up by risk. Are there anything that the Bank of Thailand or commercial banks, for example, lending loans and the need for funding, so they go to the market of the debt instrument and the rewards. Do investors know that they are getting the credit spread that are worth it or not? So this is something that is like a testing time for the SEC, and there's so many disagreements on this issue. Some people say that just don't bother with unrated bonds because they should not be in the system. And on the other hand, they say that the cost of fundraising in terms of the listed companies or small companies, what would it be like? And on the other side, some people know it well. On some companies, some people know about the detail when they bought, but they didn't know anything when it came to default. So it's something that has been quite a headache for us, and it's these things that took place in the uncontrolled environment. So like people come and lodge complaint, and the buyer said that I wasn't informed, and the buyer said that we told them everything. So I said, how are we going to know what has been discussed between the two of you? So this is why we have to regulate and set up the sale process and to have records on sales. Things like this are very important. REITs is something that we have seen the transformation from something that cannot grow to something that can grow continuously in order to absorb new properties into the system. And Thailand Future Fund is still where it is because of the problem of the transfer of assets from state enterprises. And then we have the issue of the overseeing corporate fraud or some thing that's not so good about listed companies in terms of cheating or corporate governance that is good, or using the bankruptcy court in order to become bankrupt but still rich. And this is something that we still have to look into. Well, when it comes to it, it's a little bit kind of too late. So it's something that really have to be work to be done together in order to identify early signs of these companies. When we talk about information disclosure, people just don't read it. We try to disclose information about certain companies, whether these specific companies are doing something that are they're supposed to do, and we provide information on bad practice on many aspects, or on the way that shareholders should exercise their right. These are activities that we try to do, but investors just don't do it, and when something happens, it's too late. And these are issues that we are concerned about from our side and from the SET. When we look ahead, we have to think of what to do to maintain integrity in our market and to have things that people can come and buy and feel comfortable about what they bought. Now, about governance and culture of the SEC, this is a very important issue because we set regulations for people, for companies, and if we don't do it, or we show that we're not doing it intensively or actively, I mean, we don't have to do more than what other people do in the industry. Then we are not giving good examples. We tell other people to do, but we are not doing it. So this is something that is not acceptable. So we have made great efforts. Stakeholders engagement, for example, we have been trying to improve that. And as I have mentioned earlier, we have a lot of stakeholders, and each stakeholder will come to us or talk to us from their own perspective. And that's not wrong. I am not expecting that the intermediaries will talk for other people. Everyone has its own self-interest, but we have to be partial, and we have to listen, and we have to use our analytical thinking and to try to see which group makes the most sense. But in order to do that, for example, we have a lot of stakeholders. So what we think is the most important, but stakeholders who are end investors, where we have little access, we cannot to them. We cannot identify who they are and what they are saying. So if we don't have accessibility, we don't know them, but we want to protect them, and we try to protect them in all matters. And we have to use imagination and think what kind of protection they want. But in reality, maybe that's not what they want. Many investors will say that, hey, I don't want the way that you are trying to monitor our activities. But if we don't hear from them, how are we going to identify their problem? So this is our big issue. We have to try to reach out every party in order to for example, to do the public hearing or put it on website is kind of useless because we don't have a lot of responses. So we have to do it proactively. We have to reach out for them. We have to organize a small group meetings. We have to go and listen because people don't want to write. So we have to go and talk to them, and we have someone with us to write down what they want. In terms of our own culture, I talked to everyone in SAC that we are the market regulator, but we are not in the market. And this is very important because we are entering, we are overseeing so many things that should be done by practitioners, and we have not been in the market. So how are we going to know the market well? So this is a big challenge for us. So that's why we have to have our value about being open-minded. We have to know the actual facts. It's just not knowing about rules and regulations, but we have to know. We have to be insightful. We have to see the issues, and we have to understand the landscape and the pressure points and pain points, and can locate them. So if we push this button, and then we know what we want, we can identify what we want. We would like to get the infinite outcome, but if we cannot do this well, then the consequences will not be good. And this is not good because in order to amend our rules and regulations, it takes a lot of time. Now we're talking about our board. Our board engagement has been ongoing, and several of you who are here must have had informal meetings with our board every time that we have a meeting. We usually reserve the morning session so that you can come and can talk about anything, what kind of things that you're unhappy about, anything that you, any kind of complaint that you would like to lodge, or any kind of compliments that you would like to give. So we try to get accountability, and we show who we are accountable to. Of course, we are accountable to the minister, but as a public policy office, we are accountable to the public at large, but not to any particular person. This is very important. Next is regulatory reform and regulatory impact assessment. This is something that we started last year, and some of you may have worked with Mr. Scott Jacobs. When you first met Scott, our regulators were shocked because we said we wanted to issue regulations. He just asked, how do you know that those who will be under the rules want this? Well, we become speechless because do you know when we'll issue a regulation, do you know any information? You only know, you don't know the cost. This is a process that's going to be long term. So you have to implement it and put it in the SEC's system. And besides strategies, we do other things. For example, we have to approve IPOs. You can see the figure here. And we also have the debt instruments. We have to do disclosure, and 56 last one that listed companies will have to submit investors don't read them, but there are staff who have to read them. And we also have to approve mutual funds. We have to approve all of them. So we have to look into several issues, and for example, turnaround time, and we also deal with cases. You can see the figure on the screen. We have individual cases, and we have civil sanction, and this is civil cases. We get like 53 million baht. Now, this is the scope of our work. As you can see, over the past years, this is the year-end review. This is what we did. This is what we promised to our stakeholders at the beginning of the year. So this is the wrap-up, and you will see how much we have achieved. I think we have achieved quite well. And if the stocks of listed companies, I think things turn out as expected, that we have not underperformed. Now, let's go to our strategic plans for the next year. There are so many things that we have to do. For example, we have the development plans for the Thai capital market. This has been rolled for several years, and you will see about funds for SMEs and startups, and for mobilization of funds for the infrastructure, the increasing of capacity or competitivity of the capital market, and also the way that how we're going to be ready for the aging society, just like me. And from all the plans, then we also have to look about expectations. Those who took my photo 3 years ago and now, you can see the big difference, because the expectations were so much. We have to develop the capital market. We have to promote innovation. We have to create a fair environment. Competition is very important in many dimensions of the capital market. If we talk about mutual funds, about financial sectors, it may be like oligopoly. So how are we going to do in terms of competition? We want investors to get better services and get lower cost of transactions. So it should be something that is good for all. The response, we have to be able to respond to the point, because this is our concern. Sometimes we are not able to say anything. For example, cases that are legal cases that are in process, and we cannot disclose information until it's completed. So it's kind of not fast enough for people who are affected. And another thing is knowledge, knowing the real facts, and we have to do some assessment. And the next issue is to lower the cost for regulation. And if we understand the industry, we understand pain points, and we understand something that are unintended consequences, and we analyze the processes, then we should be able to reduce the cost. And then the next issue is communication. It's just that we have our annual forum. All the associations that are our stakeholders, they know that we have been discussing issues with them. Myself and some staff, we have to talk to listed companies and talking to their board and discuss with them about organizing seminars and appearing, and about understanding new trends and so on. So what are our key drivers? Within the next 2 or 3 years, we think that there will be technology breakthroughs. I think we have come to the point that we are led by technology. Technology is ahead of us. They are workable, doable, and adoption is still adoption by investors or stakeholders is still kind of behind. And as you know, adoption is not a linear graph. It will just go and then go up, just like hitting a wall. So where are we on the curve? Once it's here, it's going to transform everything. And I believe that our capital market will be something that will get the impact and also benefits. Because if we talk about our capital market, it will have to do with information, and this is very important. In order to create a competitive environment and to respond to investors, I already talked about that. Now let's talk about strategic directions. Where are we standing? We are at the center. On one side, investors would like to get protections, but on the other hand, fundraising, people would like to get to the cheapest funds. Investors want the highest, and the other side want the lowest, and we are in the middle. So it is something that we have to do to be at this position is kind of difficult because we're going to be punched from both sides or from all sides. So we need to do innovation and scale up, and then cost efficiency also will be here soon. There are several innovations that we talk about. And everything that we do is not something that can be achieved within 1 year, and I think maybe it's not going to end within the foreseeable future. In order to lay a foundation, this is going to be a long-term process. But we have 5 issues that we think are important to us, and we need to set up a long-term foundation. The first one is to access the capital market. As I have informed you earlier, our capital market is big, and it gives the most yields. But why? People don't access this market. Why fewer people access this market? You have to. The question is what to do. And see how people can accumulate wealth within the long term. So, because wealth of individual wealth becomes the country's wealth as a whole. So it responds to the problem of the aging society is something that we have to do. Funding opportunity for growth. It also has to do with fundraising in all forms. And foundation for digitization, this is another issue, and another one is effective supervision and the reform of regulations and regulator. So we will talk about some of these issues longer. We have got information about knowledge about investors. We used to talk about going out to educate people so that they will have understanding about investment, what are stocks, what are PEs, what does analysis mean. But I think actually it will come to abrupt change because we are going to see applications and new technologies. And I have to thank the SAT because they invited Professor Milton to talk to us, and we have been influenced. Professor Merton is an engineer, and he said that that day he just said that all of us have a car. Everyone knows how to drive. But in order to educate people to know about compression ratio or torque or horsepower or ABS so that the brakes will not be locked, it's a waste of time because people don't know about the technicality. People would like to have a tool so that they would know that now the car is being in service, the brakes are not working well, and the car will not be able to move anymore. It's very similar. we are trying to educate people and to tell them about the meaning of PE ratio, about a quick ratio or sharp ratio, about analysis. It may not be the answer. The people would like to have a mobile phone and then just touch, and then they can know about their port today, whether it will respond to their expectation in the long run, or whether the port can allow me to have long-term life with efficiency. And so eventually the question is who is going to give this advice, so who is going to be providing advisory services. So you will be hearing about this later. Otherwise that session will not be so interesting, but it is something that we are going to know. We're going to see the coming trends, and people will have to change their business models, and actually it has to do with the sustainability model. Now fundraising opportunities and startup and SMEs and social enterprises, you know very well that you don't have to worry about big companies. They have their opportunities to raise funds in all forms and in many countries, not just in Thailand. So everyone is trying to serve them. But what about small companies? Those who are trying to break into a new circle in the capital market, how are they going to do it? This is a big question. It's coming to us, and now is a perfect time because people are searching for yields. Everyone is looking for yields, but fundraisers also would like to get some money. That's why we have fundraising in many ways, and that's why we have scams, and that these are things that have caused concern, or something about Bitcoins that are causing concern among other people. Kun Visudat and Kun Thakon will talk about this, and then you will know whether the authorities should embrace them or should forbid people from having to do with them. Is it something that is scary, or is it something that is okay, but you have to be cautious? So you'll be hearing this in the next session. And regional financing is something that we also have to do, because we need to inform our neighbors to know that their markets will not be efficient enough or effective enough, and if they come to work in a more effective market, it will cut down their costs and they can grow with us. Foundation for digitization. If we think that this is the age of information, what does it mean? It means that we are able to tap information from everywhere, to use it to tailor-make the process and then deliver it to people who need it with low cost. How are we going to do this if our infrastructure is not ready? Everybody. So we need to have the infrastructure. It is something that we have to develop continuously.
As for effective regulation, supervision, actually it all boils down to three things. The work of the SEC, even though we issue the regulations, but the Secretary General and Commission, we can sign as many notifications as we want. They become law. But the fact of the matter is, these laws will not have any effective enforcement if we do not have self-discipline in the people in the market and the people there, the listed companies, the companies, and all those. The people doing business in all forms. If they do not exercise self-discipline, there will be no way that the SEC can go after them and enforce all the regulations. But if you ask, self-discipline, does it take place by itself? Well, yes, for some people who have done a lot of merit, they will have self-discipline. But many a times, self-discipline comes from the fear of legal enforcement and market force. So today, market force is very important in the digital age because if you do something, you don't need to wait for people to file a complaint on you. You have your clip posted on social media and it's the end for you. So I think these three things are the underpinning factors for our efforts and our regulations. And if you ask, how will the SEC create this thing? Well, we need education, persuasion, partnership. We need people to help drive these things along with us more than for the SEC to go out and say, my role is to enforce the law, because simply enforcing the law does not work if we do not have the other two factors. And we must try to lift up these standards continuously. As for the SEC, it comes back to all the regulations, the regulatory reforms, the projects that I have told you about. The one that has been implemented is only one project, but we have about hundreds more projects. And the new regulations, we will need to make sure that it goes into this process as well. When Scott comes to talk about you, it's like you are putting clean water into contaminated or polluted water. The clean water will eventually wash out the polluted water. So we are putting in new regulations, better regulations, that's the clean water, which will drive out the polluted water. And we need to do systematic reviews. We need to institutionalize this process. It's not on an ad hoc basis. And we will need to also make friends with our stakeholders and do this together to make them see that we are actually implementing these things. The SEC team is also another challenging question because we are now in our 26th year, and in the past, practically nobody has yet retired. So what is coming up for us is within the next 5 years, our top tier people will be retiring all at the same time. So what do we do with our knowledge management? For the people who have retired, we are not able to, it's like you can't plug in a USB to their head and say, I transfer this knowledge and experience to you. So that's not possible. So we need to work on that. The regulatory school, the auditing part, the knowledge management part, and the mentoring, the coaching part, and it takes time. And the planning within our organization, organizational planning. And then we want to be an efficient and responsible organization. We have to make clear about the turnaround time, about identifying issues based on information rather than based on feeling, and being able to know the problem, to understand the issues and avoid unintended consequences and produce intended outcomes. And then we need to manage our IT and data capacity as well. So these are things that have been going on and will be taking place. It might be a little bit too long, but this is just to tell you, just like in any other AGM, of what we've been doing the past year and what we commit ourselves to doing in the future. So if you remember well, you can download the slides that we provide next year, and then this year, and then next year when you come back for this sort of AGM, then you can come and check whether we have done as we said we would do. And I thank you very much for being here with us today in this session. Thank you very much. Thank you to the Secretary General of the SEC for providing that insight and relating to us the strategy of the SEC. and the issues that will bring us forward together. Now, you're invited for refreshments. Take a half an hour break, and then we will come back to this room for the discussion sessions. You can bring in the snacks and also the coffee because the discussion will last until lunchtime. And I think you have major dishes that are being served outside as well. Fishmon, bring them into this room.
ค่ะต้อนรับทุกท่านกลับสู่ช่วง
Welcome back to the second session for our SEC conference 2018. We will have 3 panel discussions. The first one will be on wealth advice, creating opportunities for Thailand to have long-term money for use. There are 3 ways that you can access us. 5290. You can access us to send in your questions, which will appear real time on the screen if you would like to participate in the questions asking. So you can begin by sending in your questions now. The second channel would be to write your question on a piece of paper and give it to our staff. Or if you want to ask your question right there and then, you can just put up your hand and we'll bring you the microphone. And also, the SEC has provided an automated system called the SEC Application Program Interface, SEC API, to provide you with information on capital market access so that you will have more information for your analysis. We have information on personnel and also information on mutual funds. You can scan the QR code which is on your table. You can bring back to your offices those cards that are on the table. So our API system is available to you. The first panel, can I call upon Kun Rapi Sucharitgun, the Secretary General of the SEC, and Kun Warawan Tarapoom from the Federation of the Thai Capital Market Organization onto the stage, please. They go up hand in hand. And I hand over the stage to our 2 presenters. Good morning. Just now, the stock exchange ran a plus of 15 points. That's because of the color green. And so somebody was telling to me to wear green every day. Just now, Kun Rapi talked about the plans and the outlook. And now I'd like to talk about investment, of how that will make people make it more accessible for people and how to create wealth for themselves. But we do have problems right now investing in funds, provident funds, mutual funds, in the government pension fund, and through brokers. There's a huge volume of investment totaling 18 trillion baht. 18 trillion baht is 1.2 times our GDP. So I'd like to ask you, Kun Rapi, from the viewpoint of the SEC, does this guarantee more wealth for the Thai people, better lives, better financial future? I would like to say that this is our big question when we're talking about our capital market, the size of our mutual funds, the government pension fund, but actually there is some thwarted part of the market because there is limited accessibility to the market. Allow me to show you a presentation just to provide you a background of why the SEC has this opinion, and these things, what do we need to do about them. Can I have the slides, please? We go to the second slide immediately and see that our market cap is 111% of the GDP. And you will see that the government sector and the private sector debt instrument accounts for a lot of that. what Kun Warawan has been talking about, this is the figure that we get from the various associations, the broker accounts, 1.5 million, mutual fund 2.8 million people, PVD 3 million people, and so on and so forth. Now, it's only counting the number of people in each company, but it's not, the information is not consolidated across companies. It might be the same people having accounts in different companies, and it all, perhaps we may be talking about only 4 or 5 million people who have access to the capital market. The question is, what about the rest of the people? When we're talking about planning for the future, it has to do with finding ways for middle income people, people who have to save up for their lifestyle after retirement. If they don't have access to the capital market, where do they put their money? I don't know. Maybe they deposit the money at the bank, or they buy the lottery, they buy land, they buy gold, or whatever. But the question remains, the capital market has very high transparency, high liquidity, and the yield is rather high. So why is it that people don't access the market? It can be because the things that the SEC have dreamed about. For example, investors should receive good service when they go into the office of the financial service provider. They should be provided with service. When we're talking about financial services, what does that mean? It means that we are provided with information about what to invest in, what are the risks, what is our objective for using money in the future, what is the planning, and then a portfolio is constructed for us, and then the wealth advisor will see to it that we invest according to the construction. And if we move away from that plan, then they can warn us or provide advice for us. Why? Because we want to have financial well-being in the long run. This is the dream of the SEC. The reason why we have so many regulations about good advice, so many guidelines. But the real picture can be a little bit distorted. That is, when the investor goes into the office of the seller or the distributor, instead of constructing the portfolio, he decides to push a product, and then once the product is sold, then the product is put together, and then there is the KYC process and the suitability process. So what happens is that the buyer, the investor, doesn't get any advice. He's just sold something. He's just buying something, and sometimes he's buying what he doesn't need in his portfolio, and it doesn't answer the long-term requirement of that investor. This is what we are concerned about, our vision of success looking ahead. What do we want? We want to see wealth advisory service actually being rolled out in a proper way, and we think that technology will be a part of the solution, because it will help in compiling data, getting information that is needed, storing that information, and sending back that information to us at a very low cost. But I think one key component is making Thai people aware of the importance of financial planning in the long term. And if you ask, we are supporting to have wealth advice service providers. What do we need to have? Well, we need to have licenses that are issued. We need, when there are new players in the market, when they are disruptors, what is important is we need to find ways to have the incumbent and the people holding dominant positions change their business model to make them aware that we need to be customer centric because this is what the customer wants. More than the product, more than these things that actually don't create any added value in the future. As for creating awareness and instigating action, we will need to know the basic rights of the investor, what he should receive. There should be cooperation with everybody and try to find ways to create awareness and access the information and the services. So the key challenges are in creating awareness, not just amongst the distributors, but also with the users, to make people know that this is a way to create sustainability in long term for their businesses, because come one day they will know that when they buy these products, what the financial institutions are providing for you or the distributors are providing for you is not sustainability that they are providing. It's just a product that they don't want to sell to you, and it's not creating any added value. So we have to find ways to collaborate for success with the industry. So this is the idea of the SEC, and actually this is why we have this discussion. Well, representing the people in the industry who've been here a long time, I must say that our industry is not aimed at the mass market, from my observation. And when we have a distributor presenting a byproduct or whatever, what he will do is, for example, if it's a bank customer, then they will aim at big customers. Why? Everybody aims for big customers because it takes less time. You can visit the customer, you can call the customer. Therefore, the barrier that prevents us from going to the mass market is the time and the personnel that are needed. The mass market, the way to address this problem is, let's think about each one of us. Has anyone ever bought something on the internet, like e-commerce, e-shopping? Everybody is putting up his hand except Kun Gon. You can buy rice on the internet, actually. You can. Very good tasting rice, too. And so if people who are shoppers, they understand. Most of us have bought things on the internet, books, clothes. And when people, if we cut out the human contact, sometimes it accounts for 24 hours of access to information. And when you access information, you can then input something like wealth advice, like wealth advisors. Or do we feel comfortable, like each one of us, do we feel comfortable when we have another person knowing about our assets, asking us where are your assets? The Thai people are only at the beginning stage of this. And if they have this technology thing to help them, then they can play with it throughout 24 hours. As for financial plans, I think it's better to propose a financial plan than to propose product by product. And so that is not the answer to the sustainability of the company. What we have to bear in mind is one product, for example, the best performing fund, may not be suitable for all people. Certain people should not even be investing in this fund. So the people who will be providing advice or proposing these programs, you have to think that you want to find ways to help your customer in their financial planning. And if there is a new product, and the new product has to fall into a certain category that is appropriate for the customer. In Australia, they have the cost of a wealth advisor is very expensive. and they collect a fee from the customer, but in Thailand that is not possible. So they collect it from the wealth management company. And in Australia, they have a program that provides wealth management to the mass. That is one part. Also, in the past, you will hear the SEC or many people outside the SEC say, why one bank sells only products of their own subsidiary companies. But to me, that is only natural. You have to sell something in your group of companies. Like for us, we have two. Children company, subsidiary companies, because they have confidence in us. But I understand the idea of the SEC. For example, in other countries, you sell what is in your subsidiary, and you sell the products of others also, but then you give less commission for the product of others. But I think with internet selling, which is accessible by the customer himself with enough information, and then you have funds that are offered by many companies, this will help to solve the issue of one bank, one asset manager. And for the SEC, that is why we say we want to democratize the financial service. But we don't have any democracy now. Well, it will come eventually at the end of the year. Democratization, why? Because initially the people who access these services are rich people, the private bankers. Is it anybody's fault? No, because before the digitization age, the cost of service by humans is very high, and is something that they cannot put quality control on. We don't know the people at the branches, what they say to their customers. There are about 20,000 people registered, or when they collect information from the customer and find them suitable funds. But if we have, it's very complicated. So I think when we come back to what we're talking about, wealth advice, it has to be something, a system that we need to invest in. We need to have a mindset to invest in the system. In the industry that we grew up, it was a free ride. Everybody was enjoying free rides and selling along the way. But the cost of customer care is very low, and the services that are provided are provided in other forms rather than towards the objective of the investment. So I think that we need to invest in the system. We've been enjoying free rides for a long time. Without any cost per person, but actually the cost is hidden, and it falls on the shoulders of, it falls on the investor. When the investor does not get good enough advice, then he doesn't get sufficient savings for his retirement or for his lifestyle after that. And the question remains, is the bank ready? Are the players ready? Pitu, what do you think are the drivers for them to get up and say, I've got to set up an open architecture, I've got to set up this system, I've got to really pay attention to customer care? Well, if you wanted them to get up and do something is when their sales volume falls, like the others are doing very well, and you're not doing so well, so they'll get up. But I think that the banks are more aware of this now, because the news coming out, the developments that are taking place just now, the chair of the president of the Banking Association, Kun Priti Dao Chai, is here. No, he left already. Anyway, the technology that will be used, the bank will need to invest, the companies will need to invest. Instead of thinking inside out, then you should also have input from people outside the bank. Have you ever had this experience? You want to apply for something and you need to fill in pages and pages of forms in different formats. It's within the same bank. Why? Because this is required by compliance. This is required by another. another department. So don't the banks think of what the customers want? Now, if you have that insight out from the bank, this is what happens. But if the customers provide input to the bank, then they will be able to tell the banks what they want. The people who use the service. And this is why we have fintech, we have startups. We want to provide more convenience. And it is also the same in investment. I think that all the banks are willing to invest. All the wealth management, asset management companies, all the other institutions, they are willing to invest. For example, a trade that is made on the internet, the securities trade, Santi, you remember how many percent on the internet? 80%. 80% of retail. 80% of retail is through the internet channel, which is convenient. You don't need to talk to anybody. You make your own decision. And with the funds, this should be better because 80% of retail, we can then enlarge our base, widen our base 50-60%. And if you can roll out something that is easily accessible and understandable and not have a lot of complicated forms to fill out like what the SEC is requiring from us. And they are demanding that we fill in all these forms. We didn't have an understanding at that time. Now I think they do. And the SEC did not understand the feelings of the people, the clients reading this information like myself. When I grow older, I tend to not understand so well the language of the SEC. I used to understand it better in my younger days. Now, the age group will change. These people are wealthy. They have time. But if they are forced to read something they cannot see, Ajahn Hiran probably doesn't want to. So you have more opportunity. Well, we... in our first stage, we, like what Pitu mentioned, the advice of how to get the money. Thai people are not willing to talk to the professionals. They would rather listen to their friends, and they're not going to pay the professionals. So the SEC is not going to say you need to be a truly independent advisor, to say that you cannot accept money from the manufacturer or the owner of the factory. But if you do take money, you need to disclose that information. You need to tell your customer of how much you're getting. And also for open architecture, we're not expecting that the behavior will change, that products will be sold across companies in the near future, because within the same group of companies, you still don't understand all the products that you have. But for very, very big companies, they have a multitude of products. And the product owner themselves, they don't even know all the products. They don't even know what product to put on what menu for the customer. It's a tough challenge for them, even so. If they do not bring in digitization, and just as Kuntu said just now, we see that there are new distributors coming in, and they don't want to create products because the products are there already. But they're here to roll out new applications that will be tailor-made for the customer, putting together information of the products and then delivering the product to the customer. I think this is something that will answer more to our objective. But as I said, the people who will come in as startups or as new players, it's like you have a child, a dwarf fighting a giant, and we know that they provide good service, but we want the giant to change. Also, what do you think are the forces that will make them change, make them realize that they will need to do something because there are new players? Do you think peer pressure will work, or well, what else?
Peer pressure is something that will put pressure. Maybe I should not use the word pressure, but it's something that will help them recognize the fact that this is the time to do this. But if you let the customer think about this themselves, for example, startups, but with banks, they don't have the customer base that is sufficient, and they don't have sufficient funding. But if the big ones like entrepreneurs meet with fintech, or like banks meet with fintech, and then they find a suitable option, and then we can have the model that is practicable. Otherwise, it would be like banks are taking advantage of them, of fintech that are sort of all talks. So both big and small parties will have to match, and this is the model that we have in other countries. So customers who are true users can develop. Well, I think we will start to see the behavior of some the banks. They separate the selling and advising processes, and they can leverage on technology. They don't need to have advisors at all branches. They can use Skype, for example, or a teleconference approach, and they can provide services. But then it will come back to the mindset of the banks. Whether this is the way, they can think that this is the way to go, because it will be connected to monitoring and to see whether because there will be additional costs involved, but still I think that we are beginning to see here. Let me pick up another issue that will be quite important as well. That is the Provident Fund. Now we have 3 million people and 1 trillion baht under the management, and within a short period of time we can have compulsory Provident Fund too. What we have come across is that in the Provident Fund, the name is just like you have money coming in every month, there are savings every month, and everyone is having savings for a long-term when they retire. But even though we have employee choices, but they still don't choose to invest in the capital market. From what we have, the report in the stock market is less than 17 or 18%. So more than 80% will go to bank deposits or that instruments, and that's not enough. So So I think members of the Provident Fund need advice, and they are captive investors too, because they are the people who need to put the money into the account every month. So what are we going to do to help them so that it will reach people who need the service? In the past, it's just like riding on an elephant's back to catch the grasshopper. But the simplest way to do this, for example, we have a fund which is a mutual fund. I'm not advertising, but it's a business. It's a mixed fund which is designed for me, for example, because when I'm older and we don't want to invest in so many funds, when we don't know, we can't think about the percentage of the asset class. So if we have just one and fund with some returns and perhaps 4% of the bank interest, this is the benchmark that I was thinking about, and we can just withdraw anytime automatically, because we cannot have too many accounts. When we get older, we cannot have too many accounts. For example, when we have the telephone number without writing the name, we don't know whose it is. So if you sell starting with 100 million IPO, but now it's much more than this. So we have to stop this. So we should issue the next mutual fund. And for the PVD, we try to use different approaches, but we still don't get more equity. But for us, we have a lot of equity when compared to the standard of the industry. So instead of doing it the hard way, you can set up that when you are this old, you come to this, you invest in this fund. Or if you are within this age, right, you go to this fund. And this is easy. It's so simple. We don't have to be complicated. So if you're the seller, you can recommend the fund so that it'll be appropriate to their age group. It's going to be easy to sell, and the buyers will understand. You don't have to explain the way you did, but just like something about the mechanic or the engineer that having to know the mechanical details. I can't even know how to call them. So don't make it too complicated. I'm talking about SEC. It's the same in our industry, but if we can simplify this, why not? And can it be made mass? We used to say that the board of the company caused the port to be like that because they're old. But whether it's true or not, we don't know. But we have been exposed to the reality. It has nothing to do with their age, but they are concerned about the risk that they have to absorb. Because if there is any mistake, then all the blame will be put on him. But even though when you say that it's the employee's choice, it's still like that. So is it possible if you look at RMF, you can have your own choices? That accounts for 30%. That's something that is left in my mind. The mandatory PVD, once it happens, we're waiting anxiously because we've been waiting since the time that Kun Somchai, the permanent secretary, was just a young officer, Kun Somchai Vichupan at that time. And I was still young at that time too. I was listening to the lecture, and it was the first time in my life that I could understand about safety net, so that it will keep you to be above the poverty line. But now it's still not happening, but it happened during the time of Mr. Gon. That is that the focus is on the mass who is not within the workforce, but those people who are salary people, that is not enough. So that's why there is an effort to push this forward. And we also would like to see employees' choices so that people are free to pick up the funds that are suitable for them, but somehow but it should be distributed. For example, 2 or 3 asset management companies will get to manage. Well, the feeling is that we are losing our freedom because we want to make our own choices. We want to feel comfortable. We don't like it, then we can change to another one, just like so I would like to see this. I understand that if this new fund takes place, some of the money will be transferred to the new one, which this is kind of something that I have never come across before. So I'm fighting against this. I don't know about the draft law. They don't have this detail, so we'll have to leave it with some of you here. That if it happens, I just can't imagine. We're trying to keep this amount of money to be away from politicians. It doesn't matter how, so that people can make decisions on their money. Actually, this is in line with what I talked about. We're talking about the tools. Tools are something that we would like to see. We want to have for asset management companies to have a life park fund. We would like to have tools that investors, whether they are members of PVD or not, they can tap their own wealth. They can go and look and see whether For example, if we would like to retire at this age and now we have this much money, whether it's enough and what do we have to do to get additional money. This is something that is quite difficult because, as I have said, people use technology for spending but not for savings. I'm saying this because at that time you have a lot of technologies that we can go to the best restaurants in each house. You can use a Google map and you can choose to fly anywhere in the world. But it's all about spending. But we need the app so that you can save your money and manage your money, and we still don't use that enough. Another thing topic that we are interested in is something that we would like to work together. Is that we are trying to set up a long-term foundation for 10 years before we can reach that point. But what I would like to see is about alertness in the industry that will and investors that say that this is our basic right. This is something that we can expect for people who advertise that they are providing financial services. If you are giving integrated advisory services, it's not just about selling what they have. That is not financial service. It's selling financial products, but not a service. So I think this is something that we will have to work together with all the associations, asset management companies, state enterprises, and other companies, and we have to reach out to them. Otherwise, there will be a big capital market with large size, but with little usage by customers, and people cannot make use of this to be their wealth accommodation for themselves. We've been discussing about this a lot. Is that now warning is not that investment is a risk, but not making investment also is a major risk. We cannot go on living sufficiently. So now we have reached the end of this part. Do you have any questions? Or questions or advice or recommendations? Sorry, I cannot see what you have written. This is one example. The questions we have, some questions we have to wait. For example, the role of the SEC with ICO, you have to wait for Khun Tipsuda. Now, one question. Online advisory service to bridge the gap here for people in the middle income group. And here's the question. What can Thailand do? Because we still don't have this service in Thailand. It's online service that's still available abroad. I think that's what the question is. Whatever is abroad, it will soon be here in Thailand. Is this something that robo-advisory? This is something that I would like to see too in Thailand. Another question. Those who have little knowledge about finance may become victims because of the lack of knowledge. So what can you do to protect consumers in this category? I think it go back to warning. Actually, when we talk about advisory services, there are two stages. When it goes to investment, I think that's the end. But advice on portfolio construction and tracking of a portfolio construction and monitoring and service on this on this matter. I think that's the key. That's something that's very important. When there are scams, I think these scams, for example, promises that will never materialize, and I think this will we will have to rely on warnings. I think those are the questions that we could read legible enough. I think this is some kind of development. Somebody is asking a question, Kun Dao. I would like to consult the SEC. We are not sure whether we are concerned about what Pitu said. We are going to have investment with lots and lots of savings. I think all asset management companies come across the problem of not having enough markets. We have instruments. For example, Pitu said that you have to close one to go to another one. Whether it's a debt instrument or a capital instrument, we have domestic limitations. So it is our problems, and it's something that we suffer. Because of this demand and supply mismatch, which is very high, and will become more intensified in the future, because we know that we'll have more savings. So my question is that I think the SEC is trying to upgrade investment of the in the capital market to be higher than the national standard, but by benchmarking with international standards, I think we have some obstacles because of our internal problems. So do we have solutions, long-term solutions? Because now cash or liquidity that we put into investment, we don't know where except abroad. So I think it flows to other countries quite a bit. I think this is a question faced in most countries about the asset liability matching, but it will be a pressure in terms of the shortages domestically, so it has to go abroad. PVD, for example, if it's a global fund, we will look more into half asset, about diversification, about investing in industry, about going to other countries. I think that's unavoidable, and it's the phenomenon for all the capital markets, global market, because we don't know where savings will go. We have to say that we have to open a way so that these funds can make investment in all classes of assets as they wish, whether they be in Thailand or in other countries. There's one thing that I would like to add. When you go abroad, you still cannot find the required quality. Then you have to stop your fund, because if the money goes out, then the money in the country become less. So you have to put a brake on it. I am just trying to tell you about wealth advice and the way to go forward, so I don't have anything to add to this, and let me give the mic back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for the two speakers. Now we will go on to the second discussion on fintech, going into the digital capital market for Thai society. We have two presenters, Kun Tipsudatha Waramon, the Deputy Secretary General of the SEC, onto the stage, please. And the second person, Kun Thakon Piyapan, Head of the Krungsri Consumers Group and Head of Digital Banking and Innovation from Krungsri Ayutthaya Bank Public Company Limited. Good morning to all of you. Today it's my honor to be invited by the SEC. And I just noticed that it's only me and Pitu who's not wearing something black, a dark color. And you too. Thank you very much. So we're going to change our format a little bit. I talked to Pi Tui and Pi Keo that we're going to talk to the SEC, so we need to have an interesting topic. So we take this opportunity to talk, me and Pi Keo. I have been honored with being an investigator today. Actually, I'm just interviewing you about the hot topics today. And we would like to talk about the first topic, ICO. We see that in many countries this has been prohibited, and the SEC thinks that this is a burning issue or a topic, and the SEC will control it or will support it. We will see. And it has also to do with cryptocurrency and what is the position of the SEC. Are they going to suppress or to support or to do what with cryptocurrency? The second thing, we're going to spend the bulk of our time on ICO, but the second thing that we will discuss, when we were initiating this was not yet a hot topic. That is, a person has lost her national ID card. I don't represent the bank and I don't take responsibility for what I say today. I'm just interviewing you. But we understand that financial institutions, the banks, the AMCs, they have problems with digital signature, eKYC, and I've heard that the SEC has played a role in supporting the FinTech Act, and the government wants to roll out digital ID. So these things, how will it help to solve the digital the eKYC issue? And last of all, representing the people. We've listened to the government talk about Thailand 4.0 a lot. We understand only some parts of it, but the SEC as a supervising body, I think that you should have SEC 4.0. And I listened to Pi Tui, and I know that there are many things that you want to do. So Pi Keo, can you elaborate what is in store for us in SEC 4.0 in the digital transformation? Where can you be more proactive, more aggressive? With no further ado, let's go on to the first agenda. Does anybody know ICO in this room? Does anybody not know ICO in this room? I'm not sure if this agenda will be beneficial to you. Nobody is putting up his hand. The picture here has to do with this year being the year of the dog, that's all. What is ICO? I have certain data to present to you. And I have been investing quite a bit, but not in cryptocurrency. We've been investing in Omiset, and they have Omiset Gold, which is an ICO. And that has made me do a kind of study on it. And I found that it's a revolutionary way to get funded from retail investors, from small-scale investors. But if they are so small scale, what will be the yield? What will be the risk? And the sellers say they don't really want to invest in the same things as the VC. And VC takes a long time, and then they become shareholders, so they have a say. So let's do ICO. You just give the money, get the token. And if people do not know what the ICO is, if you want to invest in ICO, you go and buy a cryptocurrency. You go to a market where this is sold, so you get cryptocurrency, you put it in your wallet, and then when you have ICO being offered, on the ICO portal, and they present you with a white paper. Go ahead and read it. This is what my company is doing, and this is how much funding I want. So we give them the funding through cryptocurrency, and they make the investment. But at the same time, they give you in return a token, and you trade the token. This is the simple cycle of how it works. Another way to look at it, peek out. They say last year, the entire of last year, ICO, mobilizing funds through ICO hit $4 billion US, and that exceeds the investment made through VCs. It's 3 times investment of the VCs. And some funds, they've been able to mobilize a lot of money, maybe millions of dollars in only half an hour. You will see the great demand that is there. In the past, in the second quarter, 800 million was mobilized, whereas VCs only 200 million. 2016, only 96 million. The platforms there, you'll see infra, financial, but these companies usually base their investment on blockchains. But more recently, maybe they've diversified to other things. That's 2016. This is 2017. 3.7 billion, which is very high. And the category is more diversified. You see the colors there, which tell you where they come from. This is a little bit too dark, but what we would like to look at here is the percentage of growth from ICO date, just like IPO date, $0.00. But today, how much is it? You see Ethereum. Ethereum is a cryptocurrency. From IPO 0.3, right now they are $800, $900, and it's the figure grows very, very quickly. So many percentage growth. And if we invest 1 baht, we get 3 million maybe. And this one, ICO going forward, Omi said at the beginning, 0.24, right now it's 19. It's even more than that today. This is 8,000 something percent growth. So if we're going to look at fund mobilization, is this needed by small scale investors? Because it creates very high returns. But you need to have a strong heart. But there are controversies about it because many say that governments have come out to say that they don't support this, like South Korea, China. ICOs are prohibited, but many companies will say this is otherwise. However, in terms of investors, they say there's not many options in the market. There are limitations in investment, and at the same time, the business owners are saying IPO, MAI, many regulations. So, and even with VC, a lot of due diligence, they negotiate terms, and they want this much share, they want to sit on the board. So ICO is the best choice. You don't need to make a big fuss with me. Take my money, give me my token. Israel, they say it's okay. Other people don't want to do it. We want to be the ICO center of the world. Russia says, I don't know anything hidden in this or not, but Russia sees it as an opportunity to bring money back into the country. But our regulators, they are quite hesitant. They're not sure about what strategy to use or how they're going to handle cryptocurrency. At least the minister has said Bitcoin is gambling. This is from the newspaper. I don't know whether he said it actually or not. And also the governor says there is risk in investment, and Bitcoin is very risky. So now, Pete Gale, the SEC, what is your view of ICOs? Do we want to invest? Do we support? How do we handle? How do we regulate ICOs? Pete Gale, tell us, please. Before answering your question, I need to give you a picture, an overall picture. ICOs, this is a phenomena in the world, which takes place from the evolution of the blockchain technology, and we see this in financial markets. The first application that came out a long time ago was Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and in the picture you will see on the right, that is the crypto asset that you see. So it began with the red part, cryptocurrency, and then after that we start to see it being used to mobilize funds that are used in businesses that may not be in asset, but then started to overlap more with assets, and that is why you see the overlap with the smaller circle, which is called the securities circle. And then there is regulatory oversight in order to create confidence. And so the question that springs up is, when they mobilize funds, is it security or not a security? And the entire of last year there was a debate in the big circle, that is the non-security part. Some call it utility coin. There is no promise of return, but you can buy services and products with it, or you can become a member and enjoy certain benefits from it. And on the other hand, it also creates returns without having to put in any more effort. So in the US, you will see they have a law which does not say that it's a positive list as our law, and there's been interpretation by the court. The interpretation is, if a product is offered to mobilize funds where the investor hopes for returns from not having to use his own effort but relying on the efforts of others, that is called a security. But in other countries, the definition is through a positive list, like in Thailand. Now, in many countries in the world, securities are shares or debt instruments. So you will see that in this world, the regulators have come out to say there are many schools of thought. The first school of thought is the smaller school. They banned this. They have allowed this to happen, proliferate a lot in their country, and there have been many scams. So that's the minority. And the majority of the countries in the world have come out to say, if it is considered a security, then you must regulate it as such. And so when you sell, you must have a prospectus requirement if you want to sell it to the public, unless there are exceptions or sold in limited circles or through crowdfunding. Through this track, we also have this for shares. In Thailand, we may be a little bit different from other countries in that the definition of securities, according to our securities law, it's defined in a positive list, but for investment units, this is rather narrowly defined. It is an instrument that shows your ownership of the securities in the fund. But there are ways that you can issue an ICO without having to own anything. And so you see that it is not covered by that definition. But if a certain company issues this kind of ICO, should it be regulated? Well, it should be regulated because it is used as a fund mobilizing instrument. And so you need confidence, you need oversight, everything. So in Thailand, our difference is, first of all, we need to close this gap that exists. And then the orange part will tell you that apart from cryptocurrency and utility tokens and securities, you also have digitized assets, the traditional assets, and then you transform that into digital form. For example, people are talking about the BOT making central bank money or other assets like shares or gold, or right now there's mention of energy, for example. And so I believe that in the next year, last year, legal efforts were made in separating the dark green and the light green. But in the next year, people will start to accept more that there is regulation of ICOs as securities. And if the regulation process is clear, then we can issue ICOs as securities. But in our game, when the SEC was considering this, we have to admit that it was a very urgent matter when we were drafting the plan last year. Were you forced to draft the plan? No. When we knew of its existence, then we started drafting the plan. Like at the in middle of the year last year, we invited OMISET, and they said, we're not a security. And then in August, there was Kun Gorn, who contacted us and said, this is an interesting thing. And I understand that in Thailand, there's a group of people in the private sector who are interested in providing service as curators. And what is our view on that? Our view is that it doesn't have to do with support or not support. If you ask me, does the SEC support? Well, it's not to say that we must have these things. But whether or not we support it, it is there already. That is crowdfunding, that has a form of crowdfunding that has been that has evolved through the use of blockchain technology. And so in enforcing the terms of the contract, we're using smart contracts, using blockchain. It can be transferred peer-to-peer. You don't need any intermediary, so to speak. So we are in a world of transitioning from a world where the regulators are familiar with, like with gatekeepers, with the Securities Exchange, with the SEC, which does the vetting before a product is offered and listed and traded, and if it's not listed, the brokers don't want to trade it, or if they trade it, there will be limitations. So we will order the intermediaries, but to do so will be very difficult in the new world where everything is done peer-to-peer. You don't need to have the intermediaries. And also what you see, if you say that it's useless, no, it provides solutions for the funding of startups. Otherwise, they're not be so interested. And it's not that everybody doing ICO are good people, but it's there. You need to have something to make people confident. And if and what is the instrument that will create transparency and to sort the good products from the bad ones? I think that the fact that we have clarity in oversight is important. Without clarity, people will not want to get involved, and because they don't know whether these things are legal or not legal. So we must establish clarity so the good people will want to be involved. So it means you want to have ICO just like IPO, you need to have a market, and you have the SET and SEC doing the supervision. Now, coming from the front of the house, you need registration, you need screening, vetting, considering the prospectus. And so if you want to push ICO, then before and after there must be a platform which accommodates this. And what cooperation will take place, or will the SEC will push the secondary market to happen? Will it or will it not? Suppose if we don't have this environment happening, and we let things be as they are, then there may be a breakdown. And that is a pity because there is benefit in this mechanism. Now, when they do not care about intermediaries, but there are people who have proposed themselves as intermediaries, acting as gatekeepers, vetting, considering white papers. The code, is it the same or is it a scam? The SEC does not have the ability to do these things, but if you have companies in the private sector who are responsible and who are willing to take this role, then we will support them because it makes life easier for us. We want these things to happen, and when they do happen, then people will want to trade. If it's a security, then the trading platform must be licensed by the SEC. And so if we can work with them, if we can establish standards, if we can have best practices, then it's possible. That is my hope.
Can you say definitely that the SEC will help to push forward no, to push forward for mobilizing of funds through the ICO system? This is going to happen in Thailand within a short period of time. I can say yes, even though we don't do it, the Thai people will run out to do it, so we cannot stop them. So we are going to provide support so that we will have a clear-cut regulations that are sensible. What happens if once you have trading of tokens and like 1 million %, who is going to regulate that? If there are securities, when you are trading securities, the involved intermediaries will need our licenses, and we have brokers, we have the SET, and we have our electronic trading platform. We have new licenses. We are working on new licenses. Now we have Sandbox, and there are regulations to give the licenses that are sent to the Ministry of Finance. So by the end of the year, it can be accommodated. But if it's growing like by 1,000%, what do you think? Okay. So you say that even without control or overseeing, so it's your choice whether you want to have it in Thailand or outside Thailand, or we want to support Thai startups to mobilize funds beside the conventional channels, but to do it properly, and then investors will gain more benefits. Do you have anything else that you would like to add? Well, I'm waiting for you to ask me a hard question. Well, I forgot all about that already. Okay. So mobilizing through ICOs that SEC will provide support is like as the SEC is okay with cryptocurrency. Is that so? Well, I've been waiting for this question. Let me answer this first. To define whether what is a security or not, we don't care what are you going to buy it with. If we say that this is a security when you buy it with a baht currency, if they use a different currency, then it will slip away from us. So we don't care what you're using to buy, but we know that they're gonna use a cryptocurrency to buy. So we've been asked a lot about this. Are we going to go overboard with the Bank of Thailand because this currency is not recognized? So now you are accepting this, and you are allowing securities by accepting things that are not recognized by the BOT or the Ministry of Finance. Can you exist? Can you go on to do this? I would like to say that right now there's no Thai law that say that cryptocurrency is illegal. So if it's not illegal, then it's not illegal. It doesn't matter who does it. but it's not a legal tender, and that's quite clear. It's not something, it's not money that can be used to pay debt according to the law. So your creditors may say that they don't want to accept this for payment of debt. But SEC did not think about answering this question. But then, it's going to be a cause of concern for a lot of people. So, like I said before, it's not a legal tender, but it's not that exchangeable. It's just like some kind of asset, maybe like a commodity that can be traded, something that is not money but can be used in exchange for goods. So, but this one is different in that we use technology to. This is. I'm speaking maybe on behalf of the SEC. Forbidding is not going to help, but it's going to drive it forward underground. So I will say that I am glad and I hope that this is not forbidden yet, and those who forbid this, as they were the majority. Well, I don't know whether this is going to be forbidden after today, but if you forbid, then it's going to go underground because it can be exchanged by means of peer-to-peer. If you don't do anything, it will be lack of clarity, and it's a tool that is useful. It can be used. If we go back to the first chart that I just showed you, the light green, the tokens that are not ICO yet, but you have the dotted line, the red line. It will become cryptocurrency when people accept it and use it more, and you cannot stop that. You cannot forbid that, and you will see that there is cryptocurrency. There are coins that are used in the economy. For example, Bangchak is exploring something about trading what we call a power ledger. Well, we heard about this in the news. You can use powered, energy generated solar power. They can trade among themselves, and then within that community, they just settle this first, and then they go and make payment to the electricity authority. Now they are tokens, but when they exchange hands, they become cryptocurrency. If you stop this, then you're stopping useful innovation. So you shouldn't do that. My question is it scary? Is it bad? People think that they're not regulated, so they use it for money laundering. It's prone to scam, but scam exists ages ago. It's not just with bitcoins, but it's something that people don't know about it. So it's easier to deceive people. But how can we make use of this, and how can we create a transparency so that people understand that this is accommodated by businesses. It will be not used for money laundering, and they can differentiate what is real and what is scam. So we have to have some kind of regulation of ICO. And when you look to the right-hand side, well, you really have to thank CME and CBOE, because at the end of last year, they issued future contracts on Bitcoins. And U.S. didn't say that Bitcoin is legal tender, but CBOE and CME issued 2 Bitcoin futures. Why? To respond to investors, institutions that want to have exposure in this class of assets. So it's an asset class that some people are interested in, and they don't want to have legal, risky money laundering and scams. And this shows that regulation is valuable, and this is the best thing. And I know that the Bank of Thailand doesn't like to use the word regulate, and nobody would like to make commitment. They just say that we'll have to try good way to supervise, but for us at the SEC, appropriate supervision is to use crypto exchange to be regulated, because once they are regulated, then you can set standards that are appropriate regarding money laundering. You will set up the qualifications, what kind of capital they must have, what kind of scrutinization, and what kind of reports. So everything that could be underground, then it will become transparent. So your keywords is that the exchange platform may happen for Thailand. It already happened. We have 4. Well, I think money, AMLO and the Bank of Thailand will do something, but because now they are cooperating. The Bank of Thailand, they would like to see some kind of regulation, but they don't know who should be doing this. They're asking whether this is securities, can the SEC do it, but it's not securities. Then there must be a law to specify who is supposed to be the regulator. We may have some laws already, some acts already. So this happened before SEC exists, so it went back to the Bank of Thailand. The Bank of Thailand is not keen about this, and that's why it's still undecided. It's kind of stuck, because there's no answer. Nobody would like to answer definitely who is going to be the regulator. If there's an answer, then we can move forward. Well, we can ask Khun Rapi to carry on with this as something that he has to take home, his homework. I think we must have the ICO portal and for registration, and then we must have secondary market or the trading platform. So I would like to ask you, does the ICO have any future? Who will benefit from this? Investors, regulators, our country. Let tell us what will happen. I think it's useful. Startups that need to raise the funds, and not just startups. It's an unavoidable evolution. It already happened. If we let it go, it will disrupt our conventional work processes. So we have to embrace it. So we should try to learn. Whatever we don't want to see is that it's the kind of attitude that we chase away the new generation out of Thailand, because they cannot do business in the capital market in Thailand. And this is what I would like to show to you. We have ICO, we have cryptocurrency, crypto asset. There are implications. Right now, even traditional assets, we can use blockchain with it. For example, at the SET in New York and in Australia. So in the world, in the future, we are beginning to see that assets, any kind of assets, can be digitized, so that they will become digital token in the blockchain. You can show your ownership by using private keys. Here, intermediaries will play a key role. I tried to buy ICO, but I couldn't, because I couldn't pass the KYC. But before that, I bought bitcoins. I think people, our staff, are really annoyed because just like I felt annoyed with my mom, and this cannot be done. That cannot be done. I just wonder how can I remember the passwords, because the private key has a long password. If I print, then someone will see and then copy it. So what am I going to do? This is something that make it not very accessible, and that's why we have to depend on the intermediaries, the people that we call Bitcoin exchange. They keep this. So what do? They have to keep this, and we must be sure that this will not be hacked and that we will not be deceived. if the incumbent intermediaries can do it, so then is it trustworthy? Yeah, but can they do it? The expertise that we need is to keep our private key. People who has the advantage are those who are crypto exchanges who are not regulated. They are familiar with these crypto assets, so they have the advantage. Now, coins-based companies may be hacked and so on, but they will disrupt brokerage houses. This is possible. So as the SEC, we have to support those who are regulated so that they can experiment with this. We should not stop them, encourage them to try and to make it clear. We've used a lot of time, but we agree that we don't want to wait until the next to the sessions for the Q&A session. So if you have questions about ICOs, do it now, please. Khun Korn, would you like to ask anything? This is a really small handwriting. This is
Why aren't their activities illegal?
เขาตอบภาษาไทยนะคะ
I'm going to answer in Thai. We have not said that it's a commodity. Some countries say that it is a commodity, it is an asset. But we should have clarity here. We don't have clarity, it cannot be developed further. We should have this so that we can collect tax on it. Well, I avoid this topic because we may have to go on for 2 more hours. But anyway, there must be clarity. We don't say that it is a commodity yet, but even if it were, we are not the regulator of commodity exchange. We are the regulator of security exchange for securities and futures. Commodities are not commodity futures, so we cannot regulate them. We have 2 issues here. Let me go to the second question. I said earlier about obstacles about eKYC, whether they're banks or listed company or asset management companies. I'm sorry. I have a question. I have been listening about this for several times. So I would like to take this opportunity to ask again. You already mentioned that there will not be answers on many issues. I'm not concerned about ICOs. I'm concerned about cryptocurrency. So many things that we have seen. We are showing gains and changes and value, but very few people explain what they are, what bitcoins are, and people are not interested in asking. They just follow the figures. Talking about cryptocurrency, we have come this far. Khun Kao said that if we don't have clarity, we don't know what AMLO is going to do. So if we don't talk about this, if you say that it's not under your regulation, but the people who are doing it have to do something, otherwise they'll be all over. For example, the person or the authority who will be in charge, they will have to follow AMLO. I think all of us will have to consider AMLO. But if this is still undecided, something is wrong, something is missing. So first ICO was in the meeting of the office. But now we have a big audience. So if we talk about this and then push it to some other people, but you'll be tired later because you've been involved, and if you're not making it clear enough, then it'll be very difficult to move forward. The hearing on ICO will be extended until the 22nd. I agree with you that cryptocurrency is something that we must address. But this is just one of the 4 working parties. We cannot talk on their behalf. Well, we have been discussing more than what they did already. We agree about the issues of money laundering, that there must be some control. And the issues that they have not given a definite answer has to do with regulator, whether there will be regulation or not, and by whom. We think that there should be some kind of regulation, and from the perspective of anti-money laundering and cybersecurity, fairness of the marketplace, and so on. But we don't have the authority given by the law, so we will accept this. You should also mention the tax. Tax will have to be collected, but we don't have the authority to do any of this. So we don't have much time. So let's go to the second and third topic. 2 questions. Digital ID, FinTech Act, and support on eKYC. If SEC help to push forward, what benefit we will gain? I read about the story on Nisha, whose ID card was used to open 9 accounts at 7 banks, and at one bank, but the staff said that the person looks more like the photo than you, and there is a slot. The owner of the ID card said that the slot cannot tell whether this ID card is authentic. So what is missing here is that if there is a process that the bank can check with the ID provider, which is the Ministry of the Department of Local Administration, well, they rarely do this. It's quite costly, and just one foreign bank does this, but Thai banks haven't done this yet. So just imagine if we have a mechanism that the bank can check with the ID provider by asking the ID owner to authorize and that they will answer the question. If this can be done conveniently online, then we would not have had this problem. But if we check with DOPA, if we would like to do this, we cannot do it yet. It's not well organized yet. So this is our aspiration that digital ID platform will be the key infrastructure, so that every time a new account is opened, we don't have to worry about this problem. It doesn't need to require face-to-face, and we don't have to put an ID card into a slot. This is inconvenient, but we must be sure about integrity. So there are needs from different parties in order to identify people. The state will have the ease of doing business issue. They have to think about tax collection and welfare, and the National Credit Bureau they have to be concerned about the consent. Can they have the e-consent? And KYCCD that we have a problem with. We have nothing to do with the platform, the digital platform. It's something that the Ministry of Finance and DE have been working together. And in the financial sector, we are interested in doing this, so we would like to have our own system, a similar system. We want to have a platform that can be commonly used and there is connectivity. But we don't have common data. They still kept at each individual storage place. And to do this successfully, there are key components, and one is technological infrastructure. Now we have a consortium that is being established with the industries. For example, securities, we have 10% of the quota. And another thing that is important that we have participated is to create a legal certainty. There is a work task we have the window of opportunity to do this, so we are doing the draft law, and the hearing took place just the end of last year, and we hope that this law will be enacted this year. I hope. This is what we hope. And this act about digital IDs will call for government authorities that have information needed by the private sector to do the KYCDD. They have to provide this, they have to share this data with the private sector, and this will have to follow the process defined by the authorized authorities. So if we have this common platform, it will be a process. And another thing is that it will help to have a clear recognition with the KYC procedure without having to be present. So in the future, if you want to open accounts to trade your stocks and to buy funds, you just go to one place. You can do it online, provide information to open an account, and just give the information on your ID card and so on. And then the platform will connect it to other places, and then this will require the consent of the information owner. So it has integrity, and it also protects the data owner. And there need to be a clarity of regulatory of regulators, like the three regulators and AMLO. So this they have to make sure that this is good, but at the same time, it's not saying the banks are not doing enough. And we have subcommittees to work on this too. Well, we just have 1 minute left. Can you talk about SEC 4.0? What can you do? I saw a card. You said you win an API. You will see that you can link this information with the SEC. Oh, just briefly, we would like to talk about this. This is there's a business card, and there's a link on your desk, and there's a link for those who would like to link with automatic information. You can do this in 2 sets, and the one is a fund fact sheet, and the other one is license check. So you can just write your code, and then you can get it. So it will help with the project mentioned by the Secretary General Kuntu. For those who would like to give independent advice, so we would like people to have access to big data. This is free of charge. We are making for RegTech. We are improving on the reporting. For example, NC report submission. Instead of having to calculate and then send it to us to check whether it's accurate and have to generate answer and so on. And then finally, I would like to leave it with you that after this, digital transformation that is happening. The SEC will oversee and will change in terms of the fact that we're going to be more proactive. So far, financial service efficiency has impact on the economy. What we would like to see that resources go to where they're supposed to, but that doesn't mean that those are the places where the authorities are told us to go. So with rapid changes, timing is very important. We cannot think slowly and issue perfect regulations. We cannot do that. So we have to dare to experiment so that we will have regulatory clarity much sooner. There must be clear-cut but sensible regulations. And most importantly, we must try to attract players in the market, capital market and money market to stay in Thailand. I'm talking about the new generations, because if they think that we are really so far behind, they don't want to stay here. This is what we don't want to see. So there must be a change with regulators. The regulators will have to keep up with the decentralized world. We cannot use the centralized world and to be like daddy know best. We cannot do that anymore. It is going to be a world that allows people to learn for themselves. There is something that we call social trading. There is analysis or trading ideas that can be used by participants and shared, especially those happening from buy sides. Even people within the SEC will have to be familiar with the new world. But I believe that this can happen, and we have to adhere to transparency and accountability. And eventually it will increase knowledge and understanding among investors, and it will increase their activism. And it is something that we really would like to see. Before, when I talk about the SEC, I would be talking about regulating, but I think the role of the SEC has changed. That is the development of the capital market to be more efficiency and more effective. So I hope that the information given by Kun Keo from ICOs and to the new law as SEC and SEC 4.0 must be useful. Well, I think we use our time a little bit too much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the Deputy Secretary General and to Kun Thakon. Also, it's a fun session actually, and provides a challenge for us in the capital market, more transparency and accountability in SEC 4.0. The last discussion is still the same. You can go to our website and send in your questions. Although we may not be able to answer all of them, but we will post that on our website. The presentations or the documents are posted there on our website, sec.or.th. The last discussion for today: effective supervision, fostering an ecosystem of listed companies and uplifting investor confidence. Kun Pakit Bunyatiti, the Deputy Secretary General of the SEC. And the second person, Dr. Santi Kiranan, the Senior Executive President of the SET. I now hand over the stage. Good morning to the participants today, and Dr. Santi, thank you for being here to talk with me today. It's a pleasure. Actually, they always cue me in for last because they think that I have a gift for making things short. But I think that it's very challenging because it's like I'm a monk and I am invited to provide prayers, and the time is almost up, but we will try to keep it short at half an hour. The first two, nothing in hand. The second two, a tablet. And now us, the third pair, we have paper. So the topic is effective supervision. What does that mean? And what are the components that will create an ecosystem of effective supervision? Effective supervision, as the Secretary General has said at the beginning, it doesn't mean that the SEC issues regulations and those regulations would be automatically effective. We need an ecosystem that will help to foster effective supervision, and this ecosystem consists of quality issuers, the directors of the company knowing their duty and having due diligence, and also the investors must be knowledgeable. They must have information. They know their roles. They know their rights, and they know how to decide and invest in things that make sense, things that answer to their needs. And then we need to have market professionals, the FAs, the auditors, the underwriters. These people who do their duties very well, they will need to select companies that will be in the market and then provide information. And last of all, we have the regulators and the SROs like the SET, the BOT, the SEC. These will be providing information, providing oversight, seeing to it that information gets to investors, accurate and timely information, seeing to it that the markets are doing their duties. So it means that the entire system, if you want it to be effective, every player must know his role and responsibility, and not let things slip by. Yes, and if we go into detail, for example, what are quality issuers? What kind of quality do they need to have? We work together, Dr. Santi and I, and I would like to ask Dr. Santi, when the market wants to have a company listed, then the securities exchange, how do you approach them? Well, first of all, I must say that using the capital market is actually to build upon existing business and make it grow robustly. Now, when you see companies that have the capability to be listed, first of all, what they need to have is they need to have sustainable growth. If they have no desire to grow sustainability, then it is useless. Many a times we come across companies which want to be listed, and the boss of the company says, I am too old, the children don't want to do this business, and I want somebody to run my company. My advice to him is, you have to quit. You cannot dump your company on the market and hope that the investors will help you. Meaning that when we do our work every day, we go out with financial advisors, we go out and meet people, companies, and we see the capable people. This is a very important quality. We emphasize on quality. And you will see in the media, there will be news that says the SET is working to get a large market cap and have a high number of listed companies. But I think we know that this is not true because we emphasize on quality. And there have been many instances of companies with big market caps and they have internal problems. They can't do their KPIs. I don't, as long as they are not well organized and they don't know what to do with their business, then don't come to the SET. It's not we're chasing people away, but we want to fine-tune and get the same expectations. And Dr. Santi, being on stage with me today shows you very well that we emphasize on the quality of the companies to be listed. Otherwise, once you get listed, and then the innocent investors will be the one to suffer, and then we will have to take responsibility, the SET and the SEC. Many times there's been mention of measures to uplift the quality of listed companies, because we are always talking about quality, and I see that the SEC has been doing many things. Can you share with us those things? Well, we emphasize the preparedness of listed companies. We have been working on the quality of the CFO. Qualifications of the CFO must be according to the requirements of the SEC, and the accountant also, the head accountant as well. And we share this information on the CFO club. And also the Secretary General has been visiting the directors, the board members of the listed companies in order to inform them about CG, which is something that needs to be done from the top. If the executives think that CG is good for their sustainability, then the work is more than half done. And then we have issued launched things as CG codes. What about IPOs? Many times I do this, and for certain shares is very hot. The value goes up about 100%, but for some IPOs we see only yellow and red. What is the SEC view on this? On overheating or no, or what is your view? Well, we've done a lot of work on this. It's been there's been this situation for 2 or 3 years already, and we have come out with many guidelines. For example, to limit the giving of shares to people who have been benefiting the company, or to revise listings or for first day trade. Instead of having a ceiling of 30%, we have 200%, and we have pars that are set. And these things have been implemented for a certain period, but I think the true action will happen this year, because the market has not surged so much. But this year you see a surge in the market, so we're going to see whether these measures have been effective or not. And when we test the market and the measures that have already been implemented, we will see whether these measures are sufficient or not. And our two organizations are ready to adapt our measures to accommodate the situation. Apart from that, do you have other measures in the pipeline? We have 2 or 3 more. One of that is the SEC, as the Secretary General said. We are a regulator. We have never done business. We're not businessmen. We don't own companies. Therefore, when the companies say this is a business decision, we don't want to interfere. We don't want to go and investigate whether it is a business decision or not. So we think of establishing an IPO steering committee consisting of businessmen, external, not within the SEC. You have businessmen who are executives of companies, who are analysts, who are auditors. And when there is a case of business decisions, then we will invite these people on the IPO steering committee to provide opinion on the explanations that are given by the companies. Is it so? Is it really that way? Because the fiduciary duties, we use the principle of this business decisions making like normal business people making that decision. But if the members of the steering committee say, no, I've been doing business for a long time, that's not a business decision. Yes. And so another measure that will be rolled out is the backdoor listing. In the past, the IPOs filed this and we consider it, and then it comes out to be a cash company, and then you have new companies coming in to take place, and so there will be overlaps in the consideration process. I think a backdoor listing is just like a new listing. So we agree that in the future we will change this. The backdoor listing will be considered by the SEC. Now, but before that, I must tell you that the FA, when we work together and you have a case of backdoor listing, the SET would usually discourage backdoor listings or RTOs. It's not easy. It's not more easy than setting up a new IPO. And I must say, actually, that it will be more scrutinized in many cases after the discussion. When the companies see, then they changed their minds and dropped off. So this is another implication to tell you that we've not turned a blind eye to these things, and we try our best to stop things that are not so good. So the companies wanting to enter the SET, they want to have a live board, they want to have a CLMV board. So these two boards, how do they relate to quality? What is your stance on this? Well, live, we're saying let's not call it a board, because we're not going to use the traditional exchange methods, and it's not on a wide scale with all investors. So this facility, which we call a platform, is to facilitate people who know, people who are able to identify their risks, and the startups and the SMEs that have not yet flown to be in this group only. And this will go hand in hand with the criteria that is set out by our office. We're trying to identify people who qualify, or the QPI, the qualified buyers, the qualified investors. Only this group should come in and participate in this risky asset circle, because in startups, we know that less than 5% succeed, 2 to 5% succeed, and when they succeed, the returns are many hundred or many thousand%. As for portfolio investment, people who know how to manage this kind of investment, they can. And this is what the live facility is based on. So it's only within a restricted group, the people who know what they're doing, not just normal investors. So when we say the quality of companies, that is on the main board, yes. And for the live board, then that is for a distinctly different purpose, and it's got another kind of risk. Even though Professor Merton says it's difficult to know about the engine, and you need to have ready-made portfolios. We're trying to have these ready-made. So the people who are involved in the legacy board, like SET or NII, they will need to make your quality acceptable to the naive investors. But live is a new breed. It's a new species with very high risk. And people who are not proficient, we don't recommend that you come in here. And once you think you have enough experience, then you can come. Now, CLMV is another thing. In the morning, you will see that the Secretary General has spoken about CLMV, Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos. These are the three places that we think we need to help grow along with us. Otherwise, in the future, we will not be able to create more strength. And so CLMV board, which will come in the future, will be cooperation between the SEC and the SET will be for the purpose of helping the enterprises in those three countries, even though they have the capability to grow, the high capability, but because of the environment of the country, which has many restrictions and limitations, like, for example, labor standards. Many countries say it's IFRS, but I think it's a standard that we would be surprised to see because it's not comparable to our standard or even the legal framework. These things which will create problems or somewhat. But if we do a work on a disclosure base and set up requirements for them to enter, we can require regulatory mapping because there are many differences in law, in accounting. We disclose all that. So these will be companies that are listed or not listed in their countries. We want to have listed companies because when we do dual listing, we will benefit in two ways. First of all, the entrepreneurs. They're using the Thai market with better liquidity, so they would benefit more from the cost of capital. Now, because of the high liquidity in the Thai market, that can overflow and go back to the markets of those countries and also improve the liquidity in their markets as well. So we're working together both with Thailand and the neighboring countries as regulatory agency and SRO. It's a win-win solution. And we talk, we see we've been mentioning the multi-tier market somewhat in our country. We sort of accept that the capital market in Thailand is both wide and deep. Now when talk about the width of the market, we need to talk about the variety of products. And during these past years, we've been developing laws about trust like REIT, like the infrastructure trust, or the ones that are not using the Trust Act. We've been developing the infrastructure fund. So I believe that this will be important in the Thai capital market and will be an important vehicle that can be used by our neighboring countries. What is your opinion on this, and what are you going to do in the future? Well, in the past, it has been a year of change between one that has not been so conventional to read, and then you have more transparency in this, and the major funds that seem like you have new assets coming in, they have transformed to REITs. And the coming year, what we must do is we have to deal with a conflict of interest and governance in managing REITs, because these funds, they are managed by a REIT manager, and most of them are companies, subsidiaries in the sponsor companies, and they will buy in their own group. So it's not for the interests of the investors. And so if the REITs manager is a subsidiary of the sponsor company, then it will work for the benefit. How will it work? For the benefit of the people buying the fund, the investors. So one solution to that is we may set up a regulation to sell the REITs manager, the unit together, meaning that in the future, the REITs manager will need to have fiduciary duties attached. That is one option, but we're just beginning, and we need to sort this out and consider other options as well in order to align the benefits and the rights. And yes, and I think REITs, the infrastructure fund, the infrastructure trust, using future cash flow to create infrastructure finance is another important movement in the future, which will be important to the Thai capital market. We were talking about small things like CLMV board, and we're talking about big like infra fund and REITs. In 2017, if you remember the beginning, January 2017, we couldn't sleep because there's a lot of default in debt instruments. So debt instruments, what attention have you paid to it? Well, the default started actually in 2016, and during New Year, we were very preoccupied sorting that out. Yes, and we're trying to improve the regulations, the criteria, so that the criteria would provide more protection for investors in debt instruments. For example, limiting the use of DEs in fundraising, because DE might not be the suitable instrument, and then providing information for these people. And even though there are more limitations, but we have more facilitation, like for the NTMs. And the new year, we will not have any new criteria because these have all been rolled out. So what needs to be left, remains to be done, is to follow up and see how they work. So you see the new MD Altris rating. I hope you will help us in creating more strength for this instrument. Now we're talking about the ecosystem and many products there. If we come back and talk about the investors, I see the slide that's presented by the Secretary General empowering investors. How does the SEC want to empower investors? Empowering investors need to be done in two ways. First way is to give them better information, so that they can use this information to make better decisions. But today they have a lot of information. But the channel, as the Secretary General says, FA reads it, SEC then revises it, reviews it, so there are only 3 people reading it. So we have to review and find reasons to why they don't read this. The disclosure document was 200 pages long in the past. We've shortened that into an executive summary of 10 or 15 pages, and still they don't read it. So we want to know the reading behavior of the Thai people. They don't like to read, but they like to listen. They like to watch video clips more. So now, in issuing IPOs, the FAs will need to have short PowerPoints and video clips, and will need to disseminate that. You can disseminate that on mobile channels, and we hope that this will be able to penetrate more to small investors, and you can you can help with that. Yes, we can. And what P-Gal has already mentioned, the disclosure information, this we will make it machine readable so analysts can use it, because analysts are another group of people who will help provide information. You have advice and so on going out to equip investors more. And I would like to add a little to say that the SET and the SEC work together in tandem. And so when you have this idea, I believe that the platforms that are available at the SET will be used to support this initiative. Thank you very much. And also, apart from the disclosure, getting to the investors, we need to educate them about their rights and about the redress measures in case there are incidents. And in the past, the rights and the responsibilities, we've had an I-code come out so that institutional investors will know about their rights, and individuals will also benefit as well. And then we also have class action, which has come out for a while already, but not many people are using it. We need to find ways to use class action in Thailand to demand more for individual investors. It doesn't mean that each single individual investor will need to take action. So we should study examples of class action in other countries as well. And I see Pitui Wachira over there and TIA. She's the chair of TIA. She's been working a long time on this. And I believe that TIA will work more to make the investors know about their rights.
Talk about class action now. If we have both investors get the information and they know about the rights and duties and exercise rights and do their duties, and we hope that we will have investor advocacy to claim their rights are from a listed company. I hope we can see this before I retire. So it means that we are making every effort. We have to campaign so that investors are aware of their rights, and we also talk about products about investors. On the other hand, Pino asked a lot of questions. He's one of the professionals, market professionals, who is a key player. The SAC has an approach in working with market professionals. We have to accept that market professionals are key players because they help to scrutinize the companies that are going to invest, and then look at the information and so on. So I have to thank the FA Association and Pino. They have prepared a code of ethics and code of conduct that FAs can use, and this have already been achieved. And so now we have to publicize and have them put into practice. And we have also something about the code of SEC. For example, if FA are not making the right conduct, if after disciplinary measurements, so there may be some kind of disclosure so that investor can be used for consideration. And this is another measure that will be issued. We also have about the COI management with FAs. For example, the mother of there's some kind of a conflict of interest, and Mr. Scott is going to help us. There must be some kind of regulations and more disclosure of information. And then next year, or at the end of the year or next year, if we are going to have FA license in addition to registering with SEC, then there will be more enforcement tools, not just pressing harder punishment. It's not like we also have minor offenses like suspending or revoking. So we have minor and also more heavy punishment. Well, you don't really have too much of them. Just say something, and then they'll be startled already. Well, sometimes it's just like you cough so much, but they still they don't hear. Sometimes you just then they understand it already. So besides FA, we also have other market professionals. We have underwriters and brokers, and these are the people who work with doing something like customers first. The Secretary General also talked about that, so I would like to skip that. But another player who is important this year, following the debt instrument crisis, so we are going to set regulation that there must be bondholder representative for the debt instrument sold. So this is essential because if there's a case of the default, and if there's no bondholder rep, we won't have the intermediary to represent the investor. So in this case, we have to campaign so that there'll be more business of this kind, and we'll have to give more explanations as to what our expectations are. And another thing is the market professionals. Another group is the auditors. We've done a lot. I think we have heard complaints that there's a shortage of auditors. Well, this year, maybe since 2016, we have one auditor who will audit 3.4 4 companies' balance sheets, but that's not many. But the problem comes from the fact that how the asset management companies were behaving because the balance sheets are so bad, and so we have a new measure we call fast track. Before we approve auditors, we will look at the system of the accounting offices, and if the systems are good and if they can scrutinize auditors to be on our list, then we are going to have to put them on our fast track, and then we will approve the auditors quickly, and then we will measure their performance afterwards. Last year we increased by we have more 30 auditors. So now they're doing the auditing just one person for 3.1 companies. So in the future, maybe just 1 to 3. So I have to wait and see how it works. Another thing that we have been trying to work closely with the professional associations is to upgrade local firms so that they will have the quality that they can be listed. And we are also inviting international firms who are not listed to be listed, and then we will have more auditors. We talk about the markets, we talk about professionals. Now we have to talk about regulators and or those who are regulator and such as SEC. We have what kind of plans that will allow us to work more efficiently and effectively. From the perspective of regulators and SRO, I would like to talk about the cooperation among regulators, and also I would like to talk about enforcement efficiency in terms of the cooperation between regulators. We work closely with the markets. So in terms of IPO, we were just doing it together. We from the pre-consultation process, we have the marketing team to join us to understand the issues, and for inspecting working papers, we do it together. Company visits, we do it together, and we also consider as to what kind of information must be further disclosed. So we work so closely that sometimes it's hard to tell who is supposed to do this work. But anyway, we are going to revise our MOU so that it will be clearer in terms of the responsibilities of the SEC and those of the market. For example, in the case that we are trying to push listed companies to disclose information through the market system, if it is something that has to do with the price sensitivity or investment data, then it will be the responsibility of the market. But if it has to do with how the directors are performing the duties, then it is the SEC's responsibility. But anyway, eventually we'll be working closely together. In order to have more efficiency, of course, you have to work together. And besides the market, we also have other regulators that we work with. As the Secretary General said, we have the banks, we have insurance markets, we have capital markets. They are interconnected, and all the products are also linked from one place to another. So we work together with the Bank of Thailand. We have the 3 regulators meetings every 2 or 3 months. We also work with the department, legal execution department, and sometimes listed companies have lots of debt, so we have to work with the legal execution department to look for further information. We also work with the Department of Business Development because listed companies are public companies, so there are issues that are related with whether they can, in terms of their election, in terms of holding meetings without the chairperson. So we have to work with the Department of Business Development, where we talk about ICOs, we talk about currency, but still there's still basic fundamental questions within our legal system that maybe they're not related to ICO or cryptocurrency. We still have problems in terms of practice, so we have to try to resolve them. Now, what about the new measures in the market in order to supervise companies that are listed but seem to have problems and they get a C, for example? Can you explain a little bit what measures you're using? This measure is not something that will supervise listed companies, but it's a measure to ensure confidence among investors. See, represent the word caution. We know that investors do not read information, even though we send them we have fact sheets which are easy to understand. We summarize everything for them, but still, according to Thai statistics, Thai people read 8 lines in 1 year. So when you don't read, but how can we get them to the core? So we categorize the information. So when it's they begin to reach the dangerous point. For example, the equity of a listed company has dropped drastically to the point that it's to the point that it may not be zero because when it's zero, the share is no longer doesn't have any value and it will be revoked. But before it gets to the process of revocation, so we intervene for those people who have the bad practice to measure themselves, and this leads to problem with information disclosure, or when the auditor cannot provide comments on the financial statements. All of this, it's just almost like you're almost being sent to the ICU. So it's just like being hit by a car and cannot walk. So this is we use public information to warn them. So investors, instead of having to wait until their assets or their shares no longer have any value, or well, maybe have a little bit of value, they know what decisions to make, and they can decide what to do, whether they can join forces and force that company to take action. So it will be like collective action. So this will have to go with the Public Company Act. So a C signal is something that help investors to access information. It will be easier for them to drive. They don't have to know the engine. And besides the warning side, we have other measures that come along with the C signal, a C sign. When it is an asset that is not no longer safe, so we need to use just cash balance. And if there be an effort to have the company to communicate with investors by using the available fora, so that they can talk, and so that it will be like social force, so that they'll have to make some improvement. So the cases last year, actually it continued from the end of the previous year. The major shareholders were having argument, and the market and the SEC would try to do everything, and sometimes there were frauds, and things like this need to be highlighted so that investors will know soon enough, and they can use social force, their own social force, which will eventually will become another form of social function. And we hope that by using social force and social function, it will be more effective than using the conventional regulatory measures. So you'll be using market discipline, and so when self-discipline doesn't work, we use the market discipline. Now, the last issue, we'll talk about regulators. How can we achieve effective enforcement? So far, there was a civil sanction law which is quite effective. 20 cases were handled last year. There were fine amounting to 50 million baht, and the cases were resolved much more quickly than when we used the criminal law. And this is quite quick. And within the SEC itself, we have made some improvements. Sometimes we have to when there was someone making a defense, they have to go to accounting department, enforcement department, and so on. And there's so many departments involved, so it wasn't very efficient. So we set up a special task force, and we get staff from different departments to work together within this task force. So when any particular company has any problem, then the task force will think what went wrong, the directors or the accounting department, and what kind of legal action that can be taken. So it will be centralized, and we take less time. And we tried to do this. We experimented on this for about 7 months, and I think it's more efficient. So I think we will continue with this next year. So it is something that we are interested in. It is about the quality, about something that is more effective. So I have to say that working in the capital market, there are many organizations involved, from regulators and SROs and professionals and stakeholders, even though there are institutions or investors, individual investors, in order to upgrade the capital market to the international standard. One organization cannot do it. It has to be collaborative action. And so today it is a good sign. Well, not just today. Maybe so before we have not discussed this, but our office and the SCT work together, especially when accepting securities and overseeing listed companies. So we hope that all of you who are in the market will work together and try to upgrade the market. Anything that you would like to say before we go? No, I think we have used up our time. So I would like to assure you that we are working closely and we are making full effort in order to have effective supervision. Thank you.
Thank you both, the Deputy Secretary General and Dr. Santi as well. But actually, we still have time for one more question from Slido.com. Should we take into consideration IT audit after we are having a better standard for our auditors? Well, actually, IT audit is something that we are working on. The auditors, they have their own standards. If they do the auditing and if the system requires a lot of IT, then it will involve IT auditing. For example, they audit a bank, a 7-Eleven store, which involves IT work, then there will be IT auditing. So apart from IT auditing, we will also uplift the standard of internal auditing. And we are working this with the professional councils. So it's we're tackling it from many sides at all time. Thank you very much. Another round of applause for both of them. The SEC conference has come to an end, and our strategic plan is still moving ahead, providing equal access to the capital market using technology and innovation for sustainable development of the Thai capital market. The last session will be the summary and the closing remarks by the Secretary General. What is the way forward for us? We will take a few minutes to arrange the state, and we'll invite the Secretary General. And for your parking stamps, you can get a scan in front of the elevator. Please don't forget. Otherwise, you pay a big fee for the parking. And we are now ready. Please welcome Kun Rapi Sujirit onto the stage one more time, the Secretary General of the SEC. Well, I'm concerned about time. It's noon now. We don't want you to be too hungry. And we don't have lunch for you, so we don't want to keep you long. I thank you for being here, spending time with us, and from what you see, there will be big changes happening in the capital market, and this change will come very quickly. And as we've been discussing many things that we're doing, we cannot do it alone. We need participation from everybody in order to help and develop the capital market, the SET, the listed companies, the companies. They will all need to participate. And so last of all, I thank you for spending time with us, and I hope this will be a benefit to all of you. Thank you. Thank you to the Secretary General. As for today, on behalf of the SEC, I would like to thank you for being here with us today at the SEC Conference 2018, and we hope that this forum will have served its purpose in providing you with information about the capital market. A safe trip back to everyone. Thank you very much.